Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Prep for Wave Week. It is day 5 expansion. So this is one of the 3 videos you have for today. And expansion really is about getting out of the norm and doing things that really can expand your reach that we don't typically talk about in the travel industry. And podcasting is one of those things, but even limited series podcasting is like even more niched. So we're going to get into all of that with my friend Adam Schaeuble of the Podcasting Business School. We have done podcasts before. I think maybe you're like episode 13 of the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur. And he's just good peeps that you need to know. So hello again, Adam.
Yes. Hello, my friend, my pod pal, Rita. It's exciting to be here. I'm all about expansion day. It's sounds very exciting, and I'm hoping we can spark a few business expansion ideas here for your audience today.
Oh, yes. So, I know the story and all that, but how did you get into podcasting and what you're doing mentoring other people in their podcasts?
Yeah. So my podcasting journey started back in 2015 when all like podcast microphones were made out of wood and, like all that stuff. Um, so I had a fitness podcast at the time. I had a brick and mortar gym and I had a pretty good program. I was like, I want to kind of expand my brand a little bit, do some online stuff. And it took me a while took me 3 years to really figure out how to do podcasting, how to build an audience, make money, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But once I did figure it out, I figured it out and I really started doing pretty well with it. And I started getting a lot of my fitness friends going, hey, can I hire you for consulting to show me how to build a membership or how to get more clients or like use the podcast like a funnel to generate business.
Right.
And that's what kind of birthed the Podcasting Business School brand. I started talking more business and eventually I sold my gym, sold the health podcast, and I've been full Podcasting Business School, full-time podcaster since the end of 2019. So that's it's more than 3 years now, which is pretty cool.
Wow, that seems like, because I remember when hearing like about the transition, I'm like, it's been that long already? Okay.
Yeah.
So you recently have been talking a lot, launched your own limited series podcast, which I thought was just genius. We just went through your incubator. And so I'm like, where do we want to start? Because for people who may not be podcasting, I was like, well, this is a really great lead magnet opportunity. So I guess like maybe just starting out strategically, because I know in the travel industry, lead magnets are not a favorite, like making checklists and guides and things like that. And so, how can we strategically use a limited series podcast? What is it first? And then, how can we use it strategically?
Okay. So if you're not a big fan of lead magnets or webinars, then I've got something for you. If you thought it'd be interesting to have a podcast, but like weekly content, not so much, don't have time for that, then this is definitely an idea a rabbit hole to kind of dive down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So a limited series podcast, the way I define it is kind of like an offshoot of your main show. So my main show is Podcasting Business School.
Mm-hmm.
My limited series podcast is on a very niche down topic that I have a specific offer that the topic of the limited series podcast is the appetizer. My offer is the full course meal.
Love it.
And I view that podcast, the 21 episodes, as a funnel into that offer.
Mm-hmm.
So what I teach people with limited series podcast funnel building, that's the most important part of that whole phrase to me is the funnel building. Like I view this as a funnel. It's not just a podcast because there's a lead magnet that goes with it, an email series that goes with it. There are, I call it a testimonial matrix, an expert positioning, game plan behind the whole thing. And it's evergreen. It just, since I launched it, this thing brought me thousands of dollars of business before I started telling anyone about it. There was like a gap between when I launched it and when I started promoting it. and clients just started coming in, and I'm like, where did you find me from? Like, oh, I just assumed people found me from Podcasting Business School. And when they're like, no, this
Right.
other show, Podcast Monetization Tips. I'm like, what? It's working that well, even better than expected. So a limited series podcast is basically, I like 18 to 25 episodes. There's no new episodes. All episodes are live. It is consumed in a highly bingeable way, like an audio course. And we put so much expert positioning in there that as they binge, they just become more and more prepared to buy from you. I had people that found the show, listened to all 21 episodes. 3 days later, they're opting into a $2,000 plus program. And that's crazy. And like, without me talking to them or anything. And I was just like, wow, that really, I got to spend all that time with them, virtual Adam in their earbuds over the weekend as they binge listened to the show. Some people told me they listened to it twice, all the way through, and then all the way through again, and then bought. And I was like, wow, this is crazy.
Wow.
And it's like within a week. So the bingeability factor, when you think about traditional lead magnets, a lot of the reason why people don't like those, aren't great at those, is because they don't like having these 80-day long email funnels they have to build out with, 12, 15, 25 emails. And this is kind of taking the place of a lot of that. And it's just super easy to consume. They're not having to opt into anything. People love subscribing to podcasts, and they just binge through it with a very clear call to action and a next step that you present to them, and results are coming from a business perspective. So that's kind of an overall definition of what a limited series podcast is, and kind of my personal goal as to how I teach it to people and what we're trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah. And I think like that was the exciting part. One, the SEO part, the search engine optimization. And I don't think like people really think about that. They think about like Pinterest and YouTube and of course like Google. But has it always been that way in the podcasting world where SEO was a key thing, a key driver for downloads?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, how do people find a podcast? The main way is a friend or somebody they know tells them about it. But if that doesn't happen, then how do they find one? They have to go in that search bar and put a topic in. And that's keywords. I mean, that's how people find a show. So if you are in like the Disney, if you're the Disney vacation expert person,
right?
Well, you better darn well have Disney vacation something in the name of your show. Because if you don't, you're crazy, because that's what people are putting in there. So for me, for Podcasting Business School, podcasting and business, those are searchable terms. Almost all my episodes have the phrase podcasting tips for marketing, podcasting tips for monetization, because I found out by asking my listeners, I go, well, what did you search when you were looking for me? And most were saying podcasting tips. So I'm like, that's going everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. And like my new show, the keywords, it's called Podcast Monetization Tips for Online Coaches, Consultants, and Service Providers. So the SEO power is mighty, and it's really cranking for me as a funnel. So yeah, SEO has always been there. I've really been working hard to push it and really kind of smack people over the head with it. Be like, listen, if your show name doesn't have any keywords in it, you're really missing out. Because it took me forever to figure that out myself.
Well, I mean, and I had sent you a couple screenshots after I did some of the tweaks that you had mentioned throughout the monetization tips podcast, and was like, this worked and this was amazing. Just the SEO factor by itself, because I can imagine, I mean, you did the Disney example, and I'm like, can you believe how many times Disney vacation tips is probably being Googled right this second?
Yeah, it's crazy. Another great example, and I love getting examples like you DMing me those, like, my number's almost double and all this stuff. Like, it's crazy. I had a client that hired me for a little bit of a rebrand. I do a lot of rebranding, rebooting of podcast names and art. And we spent 2 weeks, and all we worked on was her SEO, and we worked on mainly renaming her show and doing her podcast art, so that when people search the keywords, her art was the one that was going to really attract them. She has a religious based podcasts, there's just so many of them. Like the art needs to get their eyeballs. Like that's got to be something that drives them your direction. So when we started working together a year ago, she was doing about 37 downloads an episode. And over the past 12 months, her show's done 108,000 downloads. And all we did was just change the SEO factor and the art of her show, and the content's the same. Everything else, the cadence of her episode release, I mean, game changer, because now the right people are finding her.
That is incredible. And especially like for a lot of people in the travel space who are like, where do I find these clients? I'm like, this is one of the ways that you can find these clients. Like, what's a topic within your travel business that people are interested in learning more information about? I think like that Disney tips one is genius. It can also be like golf vacation tips or sports travel tips.
Yes.
And that's why I was like, I feel like you may not, if you're not ready for a full-blown podcast, like a limited series podcast, like you were saying, is like that perfect appetizer, but you do have to be doing something else along with that, because like you were saying, this is a funnel. Like we are funneling them because we want them to get closer to converting into sales.
Yeah. I mean, if you have whatever your niche is, or whatever your ideal sale situation is, that in like maybe you specialize in like resorts in Arizona or something like that, a limited series podcast that's like Arizona resort vacation survival guide or something like that. Like the word vacation needs to be in there, the name of like whatever they're searching for, like Arizona vacation, because this will pull up in Google too. Like it's not just in podcast player apps, like individual podcast episodes and podcasts will pull up in a Google search now. So all that is in there. It's the same thing. I consult with a lot of people in the real estate space. I feel like that's very similar to the travel space, where one of my favorite things to name, like a naming formula for real estate, is moving to, and then the name of the town that they want to sell properties in. Because guess what? People are searching everywhere. Moving to, St. Louis, Missouri, moving to Charleston, South Carolina. And that's the name of the show.
Right. Yeah. Like cruising to Alaska tips.
Yeah.
To the Galapagos tips. For busy moms or for autistic families.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you can just paint the thing that I realized with my show, and I was kind of betting that this would happen, but when I named it, I'm like, I love working with online coaches, consultants, service providers, like people like Rita, like people that are out here building a business, leveraging a podcast to do it. And I kind of called those people, like I rang the dinner bell for those people with the name of my show. Podcast monetization tips for online coaches, consultants, and service providers. So when they are searching monetization, online marketing, podcast monetization, all that stuff, I'm pulling up and they're like, ooh, I'm an online coach, consultant, and service provider. That sounds kind of like it's going to be my jam. And, that's why the show's done so well.
Yep. So that is technically your freebie, but they're not on your list yet. They're listening, but you got to drop a couple breadcrumbs along the way. So what do you suggest as some of like those breadcrumbs? Because again, this is a funnel. We're trying to make money. So you can give them the free stuff, but you need to get them on your email list to keep the longevity.
Yeah. Yes. And my precursor to this statement is I really am not good at email marketing, like canned emails. I'm really good at, I'm like world famous for my weekly newsletter that I write in the moment. I'm good at in the moment. Let me sit down and write something and it's going to be mildly entertaining because I'm kind of creative, like whatever. I can do that. But going, all right, we're going to build out an 18 email funnel. I'm like, this is really going to suck. Like, this is not going to be good. And I'm going to hate writing it.
Just had to do
so
that.
let me put just that precursor out there. Now, the way that I did my email funnel that works along with this podcast funnel is a little bit different, because I was like, all right, I'm going to create a workbook that in the episode, each episode focuses on one action step. And then I give homework inside of the workbook. So homework item number 1 matches episode number 1 or whatever. It's just, you just go along And I'm referencing like, hey, go get the workbook that has, if you just listen to this episode, you're not going to get anything out of it. Go in the workbook, download it, and start putting these tips into place, put them into action. So I'm promoting that, getting them on my email list with this workbook download. And then I have a really simple email funnel, but the funnel is all based off of getting them back into the audio. So it's like reminding them. I kind of did little summary emails where like the first email, I summarized the first couple of episodes. I'm like, now, if you're interested in this or that, these episodes are really going to take care of. So if you haven't gotten there yet, make sure you dive back in. Here's the direct link. So it's kind of like they bounce back and forth to each other. The podcast references the workbook, the email funnel references the podcast, and I'm just kind of keeping them zigzagging back and forth. Really, I just want to keep moving along. Like, let's just keep listening to the episodes. Let's keep listening to the content. And I ended up doing 10 emails. And I think that 3 of them had like a more of a direct call to action of like, hey, I've got this special course and I'm going to hook you up with a discount. And so I started kind of mentioning that a little bit, but not in all of them, just in like 2 or 3.
Right.
And so but I'm also talking about that on the show. So they are working together, which is nice.
Yeah, I love that too, like the progression. And now I will say, full transparency, I was like, a workbook sounds like a lame idea. Like, why should I do a workbook? Because spoiler alert, I will be putting out a limited series podcast before the end of the year. And there will be a workbook, but I saw the value of the workbook because people are listening to you. They have ideas. Where are they going to write their ideas down? Now they can do like a traditional notebook, but if you're giving them additional tips within the workbook, I was like, oh, okay, light bulb just flicked on. And I'm just thinking, like, if we're sticking with the Disney vacation tips, episode 1 could be something about like, what time of year are you going to go? What's the best time of year? And so they can write that down in the workbook that they're going to download. And then your following calls to action would be, if you're interested in traveling to Disney, like, let's set up a discovery call to see what's going to be the best fit for you. And then your last call to action would be like, let's go ahead, plan your trip. I'm going to give you $100 off just for listening to this limited series podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. And you nailed it, Rita. Like, that's exactly what we want with this, where people, they're going down. And one of the advantages of having the workbook is people are binging on this audio content.
And it's
good and it's good and bad. They're in their car or they're doing a workout, they're doing something else and listening to it. But then they can go back to the workbook, and that keeps them honest of like, okay, here are the action steps that were in those last 4 episodes that you just binge listened to. So they don't always go like episode 1, homework 1, episode 2, homework 2. It might be like episode 1 through 3, binge listen. Okay, go back, hit the workbook on the weekend, and then catch up and kind of work it back up through there. But it keeps them organized, it keeps them honest, and it keeps them doing the right steps at the right time.
Right. Yeah, because I was thinking, I'm like, oh, if I went back like on my travel business, I have my cruise retreat framework, which is like you're picking out dates, you're picking out location. And so I just like, this is just a natural fit. And I feel like people are already doing this kind of stuff when they're travel planning. They're going to the Pinterest, they're going to the TikTok, finding inspiration, and they're saving it somewhere. And if that somewhere can be in your guided workbook, then you've got them like on a long-term journey.
Yeah. And the workbook is nice and simple to create. You can get on Canva and nerd out as much as you would like. I kept mine very simple because I'm like, all right, it wasn't like super fun for me. I like designing Instagram things on Canva. The workbook, I was like, I'll put a few funny Adam faces in there and let's call it good. Yeah. But yeah, like people are downloading that thing. I've put a ton of people on my email list with this show. So I launched this show. I'm getting clients like before I even tell people about it, which blew my mind. And my email list starts to blow up. I was like, wow. And it's just because of the way we frame it, just for those ideal people that I really want in my audience. It's like an attractor beam. So it's gone very well.
Right. And I just love the podcasting modality. And I mean, I've loved it. I've been doing this since 2020. And I think like for all of you, like I don't want to say it's the lazy way because there's a lot of work that goes behind here. But if you don't want to have to like get dressed up, females, people who like do their hair, if you wear makeup, like don't have, there's no fluff here. It's really you are
Yeah.
communicating. You need like a couple tools off of Amazon for your microphone. You can do Zoom or whatever for streaming. It's like very low impact, but then the work that you have to do at the end to maintain the strategy and the visibility, that's where the like mental
Yeah.
effort goes in.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing that I haven't even told anybody this so far, like the show's been out for over a month now. I have not released any video content from that show. 21 episodes, all audio. I've not posted one video, nothing. And this thing's bringing in an obscene amount of money every week. And it's like, it's just the audio content and SEO and the funnel that's been built out. I haven't had to do TikTok videos, reels, nothing. Down the road, maybe I'll do some highlight videos from some of the episodes or whatever. The only online content I created were like Instagram story, Canva template things that say, hey, go listen to the show. Here's the link, basically, with like smoke behind it or something. And that's it. And I'm just kind of constantly reminding people. Now I'm doing some pretty heavy email marketing with the show launch and all that with, and I use it as a call to action on my main show. So it is being marketed and promoted, but I mean, the social media lift that comes along with a lot of podcasting, like I haven't had to do that. So that has been a pleasant surprise.
Well, and that I will give you again, like huge kudos because I now follow your 72-hour rule for social media. Your promotion, I'll let you talk a little bit about that, but that has made, I was like, well, shoot, like this is how I'm going to redo my social media. Like what I'm putting out on social media is going to promote my podcast or any events that I put out for the industry work that I do, like Prep for Wave Week.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with anything that you're doing as an online entrepreneur, but especially as a podcaster, you got to have some systems in place. And I'm a systems nerd. Like I can't operate without it. I love spreadsheets. I've got Google Docs. I love Evernote checklists. Like, yes, please, let's do all these things. But yeah, like having little simple formulas to hold me accountable, like my 72-hour content rule of I release an episode. I'm trying to get 5 marketing assets for that episode out within 72 hours. And just, that makes me go, I have to tell people about this episode. I have to tell people about this content. So little frameworks like that, I enjoy them. And that's kind of weird in the creative space because a lot of creative people don't like being boxed in. I don't be boxed in, man, all this structure, but I love it. That's why we're friends.
Like, I love those things that are just like automatic. I'm like, okay, I know I'm doing a podcast episode every week and I need to create 5 pieces of content. My 5 pieces of content are thank you to Cast Magic, which is an AI that repurposes my exact words from the podcast episode.
Yeah. Okay. Quick funny story. Since we're both ultra organized people, yesterday I had a client fly into St. Louis to do a VIP day with me. And he didn't have Evernote. He didn't have a checklist. He didn't have any of the things that we love as very organized people. And he's a magician. He's a comedian. He's a podcaster, ultra creative, not so organized. Everything he had was in giant, bold-faced marker on a giant piece of paper that was probably like almost 30 feet wide. He had it all folded up. Like it was as big as the floor in the room that I'm sitting in now. And it was all folded up. And he's trying to like unwind this thing in a Starbucks. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. With like big, thick marker and stuff crossed out. And it's literally like probably a 10 feet by 15 feet piece of paper folded up in his briefcase. It is huge.
Oh my gosh. I was going to say, I'm like, I have my master plan, but
the size of the floor, and he's a magician. So I'm like, is he going to cut it up with scissors and make it like a spreadsheet or something? No, it's just a giant disorganized piece of paper. But it works for him. So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've been talking about systems on Prep for Wave Week, and I'm like, I'm one of those that it'll take me forever. And it took me forever to like finally use something like electronic, a project management tool. And now that I'm doing it, I'm nerding out. I'm like, what else can I put in this tool to make life easier for me?
Yeah. Yeah.
uh
Yeah. Like
Talking
I'm like
about,
that with iPhones.
oh yeah.
So I'm always way behind. I've got like the iPhone 8 now. And I'm like, when I went from 6 to an 8 a couple of years ago, I was like, mind blown. Look at all this. And now people make fun of me because my iPhone still has the button at the bottom of the screen. And like, you have the button still? I'm like, yes. Yes, I do.
Oh, see that I had to upgrade I'm a Samsung girl, so I had to upgrade my Samsung a couple of years ago, but I'm like, oh, it's a new world.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think we could like continue speaking about like expansion. We've talked a lot about podcasting, and not that I want to drop that, but I know you are also a huge fan. So we have another presentation today about building wealth. And I know that's like one of the things that you also geek out on, specifically when it comes to working less and having like a 3-day work week. And
Yeah.
that is all that Adam works. He works a 3-day work week. And so how did this come to be, and how is it really helping you expand your business and just your life?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of the idea of not chasing infinite amounts of income, because I feel like that's what leads to a lot of entrepreneurs to burn out. Like
Mm-hmm.
they don't celebrate when they do accomplish awesome things with their monetization and business and things like that. That it's just kind of like another check and like, oh, I made $1 million. Okay, check. Now our goal is 2 million and I'm not there yet. And
Right.
they're just this perpetual cycle of not there yet. So what I like to do is at the end of a year, I kind of do some reflection. I go, okay, this next year, what's my ideal lifestyle for this year going to cost? And I keep a lot of data. I know what I spent on everything. And I'm like, all right, this is about how much I need to bring in.
Mm-hmm.
And when I bring that in, I stop working. Like, I'm not like, and now let's double it and triple it. I'm like, oh, this was what I wanted to do to bring in.
Uh-huh.
And this is ideal. And I'm like, I'm very comfortable, and all the investments are happening and all the everything, whatever. And so eventually I figured out that, my idea initially was like, I'm just going to bust my butt until I get to that number and then not work the rest of that year. And that doesn't work with like social media and content production and things like that.
Right.
So I just started figuring out how many days per week I needed to work to be able to hit that over a year. And that's worked much better. So I just kept on plucking days off of the work tree
Uh-huh.
until now I just work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'm able to hit my income goals every year. Like I've already hit it for this year. So
Yay.
this last quarter, it's just like kind of just building up and
Frosting.
doing cool things. But yeah, I'll not work. Let's see here. Where am I at? I've already not so far this year. We're recording this on October 10th. I've not worked over 150 days. I had over 150 days off so far this year. I'll cross 200 this
Nice.
year out of the 365. So, but it took me 7 years of really busting it as an online
Right.
entrepreneur, having a brick and mortar business and online thing at the same time. This wasn't like I immediately started working 3 days a week and now it's so easy, like not easy at all,
I
super
love that you
hard.
like mentioned that too,
Yeah.
like, oh, you can do it too. No,
Yeah.
I
It's
mean, you
really hard.
could, but it's
But
not going to be like,
yeah. So I don't recommend like, okay, everybody stop working and just do 3 days a week. Now you probably, it'll be a crash and burn. But if you're like, I would say 1 day less. So if you're working 8 days a week, let's do 7. But if you're working
mm-hmm,
7, let's do 6. If you're, and just try one less day. And what'll happen is you have to delegate a little bit more. You have to get more effective and efficient with your systems. You may have to hire, you may have to fire. I don't know. You may have to just quit screwing around. That was me. I was just creating all kinds of stuff that was just wasting time and nobody was buying it. And I was
mm-hmm,
like, I mean, that's kind of what led me to sell my fitness brand and my gym and my health show and all that. So I was
mm-hmm,
like, that's bringing in some income. But if I threw all my eggs in this podcasting business basket, I could be more efficient, earn more income, and I could
mm-hmm.
do it in less time. So I kind of put all my chips on the table over there and my bet paid off. But, just taking time, like I'm a dad and I really enjoy, like when we're done, I'm going to go run my kids through a workout. I already fed one of them and got him going. And, I make him breakfast and I drive him to school and pick him up. And I
Mhm.
coach my son's basketball team and I'm around, and
Yeah.
that's extremely important. I've already worked out today. I work out every day and like I have time for me. A lot of entrepreneurs lose sight of that because they're so invested in the hustle. And I applaud that, but I'm also somebody that I've worked myself into the hospital 3 different times, like
Mm.
anxiety, exhaustion, passing out, all that back when I was a owner of a gym, but I had 500 plus clients and 35 employees, and I was doing podcasting and all this stuff on top of it. So I learned that lesson the hard way. And now I'm kind of an example of the other side. But getting there wasn't easy, but I definitely recommend working a little bit less, aim for, I think at some point, either the end of this year or the beginning of next year, I'm going to do a free online challenge. That's just called Work One Less Day, the Work One Less Day challenge. And I'm
I
going to help
love
everybody
it.
work one less day.
I
Yeah.
love it. I'm in. Well, it's two things from that is that I went on like a staycation. I think it was like the first non-work trip with my boyfriend in September. And I was like worried. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna be so behind and all that. And I remember the week after being like, because I worked just a tiny bit, but I'm like, nothing, the world didn't end. I don't feel
Yeah.
bad. And so thinking like, okay, I can implement certain things and it's just gonna light the fire on the other days to get it done. And then the second thought is that yes, income is critically important for us to, have an amazing life, but it's not the only success marker. And I love how just openly that you talk about being involved with your family and that being as equally important to you, if not even more. But that's why you do all
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. That's the why behind the whole thing. Several years back, I was in a mastermind and they kind of did this weird thing and I was uncomfortable with it. And I didn't go back, but we all got in a big circle and everybody talked about their business goals
Mhm.
and all of them. And it was primarily men. So the whole ego factor started kicking in. And the first guy goes, he's like $1 million. And the next guy's like 1.5 million. And it just kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm the second to last guy to go. So by the time it gets to me, this guy's like, 10 million and I just bought a helicopter and all
Oh
this crap.
gosh.
And then I go, I want to earn enough income so that I only have to work 3 days a week. I can take my kids to school. I can pick them up from school. I can work out every day. I basically painted the life that I'm living now.
Uh-huh.
And I got so many people like during the break, everybody's like, you have the best goals. and like that, like I had so like people pulling me over at the salad bar, like, listen, let's talk. I need to revamp my goals more like you. And so that's why I like to talk that way. I'm appreciative that you kind of gave me a minute to be able to shine a light on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's, I have friends that are like, oh, yeah, you should open an agency. And I'm like, I'm very similar in that I just want a really comfortable life. And I don't have to have this big, ginormous business. I just want to live really well, make the income that I need to make, but then just enjoy life with my family, with my friends, with my little nephews, and be able to be present for everything.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
true gift, and like it's really with my kids especially. I've been doing at least a 4-day work week for 2 years now, and the time I'm able to invest in the kids is really starting to show up. Like just that extra attention and their athletics and all that, school. And
Right.
it's just like, wow. Because, my wife works part-time as well. She's a physical therapist. So I've encouraged her to throttle back, do the same thing. And we're just like around them all the time. We can take them to all the stuff and mentor them and be present. And it's really, really showing up and how they're like the young people that they are developing into. So that's really neat to see.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Well, Adam, thank you like for sharing the gamut here, talking about podcasting, but also personal and professional goals, how can people stay in touch with you and learn more about either full-time podcast or part-time podcasting or a limited series?
Yeah. Well, my two shows, anywhere that you listen to audio, just hit that search bar, Podcasting Business School. That's my main show, over 400 episodes. Come and hang out. You're going to check out my limited series podcast. Just search podcast monetization tips and it will pull right on up, and say hello to me on Instagram at Podcasting Business School, and hit me up in those DMs and let me know that Rita sent you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, travel advisors, for tuning in to Expansion Day. If you haven't already, you do have 2 other videos. And if you did purchase the study hall pass, I will see you at 3 p.m. Eastern this afternoon, so we can talk about this session or the other ones on expansion. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye.